Hello students, how are you all? In the last video, we had talked about the introduction and the gist of the chapter, Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. Now in this video, we are going to talk about detailed explanation of the chapter. So let us proceed. Introduction. This chapter has been taken from Nelson Mandela's book of the same name, Nelson Mandela Long Walk to Freedom. It provides us a glimpse of the early life of Nelson Mandela, his education. He was a lawyer by profession and he had spent 27 years in prison. 27 means around 30 years. And the pains he had suffered in his young age. The chapter recounts his fights for the freedom for his own people who were tortured by whites. In the chapter, Mandela gives two contradictory pictures of his own country. One in which the blacks were tortured and suffered quietly, and second, the blacks will be free to live the life of their own. About the characters. Nelson Mandela, first black president of South Africa who fought for the equal rights of the black. He suffered a lot of pain for the freedom. Zenani, daughter of Nelson Mandela. She accompanied Nelson Mandela in his inauguration day and she was very close to him. Thabo Mbeki, the first deputy president of South Africa, he was also very close to Mandela. Then Mr. de Klerk, he was the second deputy president of South Africa. Nelson Mandela, Zenani and Thabo Mbeki, these all were the natives, the black people, whereas this man, Mr. de Klerk, was a white, which shows that they were not giving preference only to the black community but to the white community too, because they wanted equal importance. They wanted equality. Equality means that both the people, or in fact all the people, have equal rights. No one would be given preference on the basis of its color. Explanation Part 1. 10th May dawned bright and clear. For the past few days, I had been pleasantly besieged by dignitaries and world leaders who were coming to pay their respects before the inauguration. The inauguration would be the largest gathering ever of international leaders on South African soil. The ceremonies took place in the lovely sandstone amphitheatre formed by the Union Buildings in Pretoria. For decades, this had been the seat of white supremacy, and now it was the site of a rainbow gathering of different colors and nations for the installation of South Africa's first democratic non-racial government. So it was 10th May 1994 when Nelson Mandela sworn in as the first black head of state, South Africa. It was after years of struggle that his anti-racist party that came into power. Until then, the seat had always been occupied by white people, white presidents. And that is why the author, Nelson Mandela, referred to the day as bright and clear. It was a morning full of hope. Days before this date, many notable personalities started congratulating him for his victory. For the very first time in the country's history, so many international leaders had gathered together. They had come together for the inauguration ceremony. The ceremony took place in an open circular building made of sandstone and consisting of union buildings in the Pretoria city. So this amphitheatre, sandstone amphitheatre, is an open circular area. So I hope this part is clear. Let us proceed to part 2. Explanation Part 2. On that lovely autumn day, I was accompanied by my daughter Zenani. On the podium, Mr. de Klerk was first sworn in as second deputy president. Then Thabo Mbeki was sworn in as first deputy president. When it was my turn, I pledged to obey and uphold the Constitution and to devote myself to the well-being of the Republic and its people. So this is Zenani, and you had seen Thabo Mbeki in the last video. The author Nelson Mandela was accompanied by his daughter Zenani on his big day. First, the two vice presidents, that is Thabo Mbeki and Mr. de Klerk. They sworn in as deputy presidents, and then when his turn came, he committed to respect, protect, and follow the constitution. And he also pledged that he's going to devote his entire life into the welfare of the country. Explanation Part 3. To the assembled guests and the watching world, I said, today, all of us do, by our presence here, confer glory and hope to newborn liberty. Out of the experience of an extraordinary human disaster that lasted too long, must be born a society of which all humanity will be proud. We, who were outlaws not so long ago, have today been given the rare privilege to be the host to the nations of the world on our own soil. We thank all of our distinguished international guests for having come to take possession with the people of our country of what is, after all, a common victory for justice, for peace, for human dignity. Nelson Mandela mentioned some parts of his speech where he had said that everyone by his presence was given rights to hope for a new beginning. The previous rulers were discriminatory, the white people that were ruling, they were discriminatory and they lasted for long, but the ones who are given the opportunity to rule now, that is African National Congress, would stand up against discrimination. They are going to stand up against discrimination. So don't worry, we are not going to discriminate between the whites and the blacks. They would stand up against discrimination, and he's very glad to host such a ceremony with the presence of global leaders. All the international leaders were there. It is an achievement in itself. There was a time when South Africa, for practicing apartheid, lost all its international political relationships. Now, when there is no segregation on the basis of race and gender, other nations are very happy to have healthy democratic relationships. Finally, they have come to power and they pledged to make everyone proud. He thanked everyone, especially the international leaders, for joining them in celebrating their achievement, which is a step toward an equal society where every human being will be treated fairly and equally, irrespective of his color, of his gender, of his age. There will be no discrimination. That's what he said in his speech. We who were outlaws not so long ago. We who were outlaws not so long ago means that they were the ones who had broken the law. They were the ones who were against the law. Not so long ago, when the whites were ruling, they were basically criminals. But today, they have been given the rare privilege to be the host of the nation. And today, they are actually the leaders of the nation, the same criminals. And also, he thanked all the international guests for coming. So, I hope this part is clear. Explanation Part 4. We have, at last, achieved our political emancipation. We pledge ourselves to liberate all our people from the continuing bondage of poverty, deprivation, suffering, gender, and other discrimination. Never, never, and never again shall it be that this beautiful land will experience the oppression of one by another. The sun shall never set on so glorious a human achievement. Let freedom reign. God bless Africa. He mentioned that after great struggle, they have finally achieved political freedom. His government promised to free everyone of the still existing poverty, hardship, and inequalities of all kinds, along with assuring everyone of a country where no community will be considered inferior. All the communities will be treated equally. He also promised that. He then exclaims that freedom will rule in this country, and may God shower his blessings upon the land. Just look at this picture. Natives, Indians, and coloreds. Natives mean the blacks, Indians, the tribal people, and coloreds. If you enter these premises at night, you will be listed as missing. Why not white? Why haven't they mentioned that the citizens of this country or general people? They have specifically mentioned. Armed guards shoot on sight. Savage dogs devour the corpse. You have been warned. I mean, what is this? This is so brutal. Let us proceed to part 5. A few moments later, we all lifted our eyes in awe as a spectacular array of South African jets, helicopters, and troop carriers rode in perfect formation over the Union buildings. It was not only a display of pinpoint precision and military force, but a demonstration of the military's loyalty to democracy, to a new government that had been freely and fairly elected. Only moments before, the highest generals of the South African Defence Force and Police, their chests bedecked with ribbons and medals from days gone by, saluted me and pledged their loyalty. I was not unmindful of the fact that not so many years before, they would have not saluted me but arrested me. Finally, a chevron of Impala jets left a smoke trail of the black, red, green, blue, and gold of the new South African flag. Just after the newly elected president's address to the audience, an impressive arrangement of fighter jets, helicopter, and soldier transporters raised everyone's heads up in the sky. It actually they had made a South African flag in the sky, and it symbolized perfection as well as military's respect and obedience towards the free country. The high commanders who have won medals for their bravery, they also saluted and promised their loyalty. Mandela also mentioned that he was well aware that these commanders who were now saluting him would have arrested him under the previous rule as during the oppressive white supremacy. He was considered to be a criminal at that time. The air show finally ended by making of the South African flag in the sky from smoke beneath the jets. So this part is clear. Let us proceed to part 6. The day was symbolized for me by the playing of our two national anthems and the vision of white singing Kosi Siklil, I Africa, and black singing Die Stem. The old anthem of Republic, although that day neither group knew the lyrics of the anthem, they once despised that they would soon know the words by heart. Nelson Mandela remembers the day as the playing of two national anthems of the country, one of the whites and other that of the blacks. On that day, no one knew the lyrics, the exact lyrics of the song. But they were so confident that everyone would soon learn this anthem and that they once hated. Explanation Part 7. On the day of the inauguration, I was overwhelmed with a sense of history in the first decade of the 20th century, a few years after the bitter Anglo-Boer War, and before my own birth. The white-skinned peoples of South Africa patched up their and erected a system of racial domination against the dark-skinned people of their own land. The structure they created formed the basis of one of the harshest, most inhumane societies the world has ever known. Now, in the last decade of the 20th century and my own 8th decade as a man, that system had been overturned forever and replaced by the one that recognized the rights and freedoms of all people regardless of the color of their skin. On that day, Nelson Mandela, he remembered the days of past when this whole system of apartheid emerged. It resulted in inequality and inferior treatment of dark-skinned people. They were deprived of their own basic fundamental rights. Just because they were dark in complexion, that is why they were not given the same rights that were given to the white community. The blacks were totally deprived of their basic fundamental rights. And as a result, one of the world's most brutal and harshest and inhumane society was developed. This began even before he was born. This system created an atmosphere of extreme cruelty and injustice for a particular part of the community. And now, when he's in his eighth decade as a man, eighth decade means that he was between 70 to 80. His age was between 70 to 80. So, in his own eighth decade, he had changed the entire system. Everything is changed now. Everything is overturned now. The whites are not ruling. It is a multicolored party, multi-racist party. People are given basic rights, the rights that should belong to them just because they are human beings, not because they are white or they are black. Who brought that system? Nelson Mandela and his people. Explanation Part 8. That day had come about through the unimaginable sacrifices of thousands of my people, people whose suffering and courage can never be counted or repaid. I felt that day, as I have on so many other days, that I was simply the sum of all those African patriots who had gone before me. That long and noble line ended and now began again with me. I was pained that I was not able to thank them and they were not able to see what their sacrifices had wrought. That day, on the day of inauguration, this equal and free country was a result of sacrifices of countless other men and women who have fought all their lives for this day. It was not only Nelson Mandela's hard work, it was the hard work put in by many people. And unfortunately, they were not present there because they had died. They were struggling for the freedom of South Africa. The author means Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela wishes if he could thank them, but unfortunately they were not there. Nelson Mandela gathered his courage and power from all these people and thus wishes to make them proud. If he is there, if he is elected as the president of South Africa, if he is so courageous, if he is so strong, it is not only because of him, it is because of all those people who had supported him. When India got independence, it is not just because of one person, it is the contribution of many freedom fighters. We cannot just say that only one person is responsible. Yes, that person had the courage in him that he took things forward, but still, it was not only him. It was because of many people. Similarly, if South Africa got independence, it is not only because of Nelson Mandela, but many people. And who are the people? Oliver Tambo, Walter Sisulu, Chief Luthuli, Yusuf Dadu, Bram Fischer, and Robert Sobuk. The policy of apartheid created a deep and lasting wound in my country and my people. All of us will spend many years, if not generations, recovering from that profound hurt, but the decades of oppression and brutality had another unintended effect. And that was that it produced the Oliver Tambos, the Walter Sisulus, the Chief Luthulus, the Yusuf Dadus, the Bram Fischers, the Robert Sobuk of our time. Men of such extraordinary courage, wisdom and generosity that their like may never be known again. Perhaps it requires such depths of oppression to create such heights of character. My country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil. But I have always known that its greatest wealth is its people, finer and truer than the purest diamonds. This oppression policy scared many people, and it will take a lot of time, a very long time, to heal that. People had suffered a lot and they are hurt, and that hurt had developed a wound, and this wound will take a lot of time to recover. And it is because of only that wound such great people like Oliver Tambers, Walter Cicillis, Chief Lutherus, Yusuf Dadus, and Bram Fishers, Robert Sokos, they had taken birth. They were like normal people only, but because they saw that their own people are being tortured, that is why they took an initiative and they fought for the country. They were such great people that no one would be ever able to meet such people again. Nelson Mandela also says that human beings are like spring. The more you press them, the more you oppress them, they're going to bounce back with more pressure. He also said, my country is rich in the minerals and gems that lie beneath its soil. My country is very much rich in these gems and minerals. My country has a lot of such things, but the true gem of a country is its people. If they are strong, if they are fine, if they are courageous, that means the country has actually true gems. Talk about any country, talk about Japan. That country does not have much resources, but that country is excelling in every aspect. Why? Because the people are very hardworking. So I hope this part is clear. Explanation part 10. It is from these comrades. Comrades means the people who are working with you, your colleagues. It is from these comrades in the struggle that I learned the meaning of courage. So in this paragraph, he's talking about the meaning of courage. Time and again, I have seen men and women risk and give their lives for an idea. I have seen men stand up to attacks and torture without breaking, showing a strength and resilience that defies the imagination. He said, I have seen people fighting against the ruling government, fighting against the police, fighting against the people who were brutal, and they were tortured. They were tortured like no one can even imagine. I learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. Now, this is a very important paragraph of this chapter. Nelson Mandela has defined courage in his own words. He said everyone has a certain sort of fear. You have some fear. Some of you might have fear of darkness. Some of you might have fear of heights. Some of you might have fear of certain thing, certain animal, certain creature. If you do not have any fear, that does not make you brave. What makes you brave or what makes you courageous is you have a fear and you overcome it. You deal with it. That makes you courageous. That was the definition of Nelson Mandela's courage. This young man is Nelson Mandela. This young man. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin or his background or his religion. People must learn to hate. And if they can learn to hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Now, Nelson Mandela says that no one is born hating another person. In fact, when a new baby is born, when a baby is born, that baby knows how to love. That baby can love his or her mother. So hatred is something that a person learns from the surroundings. But love is a natural feeling. And if you can teach someone how to hate, you can definitely teach that person how to love, because love is more natural. Even in the grimmest times in prison, when my comrades and I were pushed to our limits mean when they were tortured, I would see a glimmer of humanity in one of the guards, perhaps just for a second, but it was enough to reassure me and keep me going. He said when they were torturing me, when they were punishing me, they were torturing me, I could see a second of change in one of the guards. And that gave him a hope that if I can change a person who has been appointed to torture me just for a second, then I can change the whole community. Man's goodness is a flame that can be hidden but never extinguished. You may hide man's goodness, but you can never disappear it. Explanation Part 12. In life, every man has twin obligations. Twin obligation means two duties. First, obligations to his family, that means duties towards his families, to his parents, to his wife and children. This is duty number one. And he has an obligation to his people. People means country, community, country. In a civil and humane society, each man is able to fulfill those obligations according to his own inclinations and abilities. Now, in a natural environment, in a natural country, in an independent country, where everyone is free to do whatever he or she wants to do, in that country, the man can fulfill both the duties honestly, sincerely. But in a country like South Africa, at that time, it was almost impossible for a man of my birth means Nelson Mandela's community, Nelson Mandela's family, and color to fulfill both of these obligations. Either you can choose your family or you can choose your country. Because if you're going to choose your family, that means you're selfish. But if you're going to choose your country, that means you're ready to sacrifice with your family. In South Africa, a man of color who attempted to live as a human being, who fought for the rights, was punished and isolated. Isolated means kept alone. In South Africa, a man who tried to fulfill his duty to his people was inevitably ripped from his family. Ripped means detached from his family and his home and was forced to live a life apart, a twilight existence of secrecy and rebellion. I did not in the beginning choose to place my people above my family, but in attempting to serve my people, I found that I was prevented from fulfilling my obligations as a son, brother, father, husband. So he said, I did not do it deliberately. I did not choose my country or my people above my family deliberately. It happened when I supported my people, when I supported my country. I realized that I am not able to fulfill my duties as a father or as a husband or as a brother or as a son. Explanation Part 30. In this paragraph, Nelson Mandela is explaining that how the meaning of freedom changed for him gradually and slowly. I was not born with a hunger to be free. He had no notion in his mind like that he's going to be free or he wants to get free. I was born free. When he was born, he was never told that you are a slave. Free in every way that I could know. Free to run in the fields near my mother's hut, free to swim in the clear stream that ran through my village, free to roast mealies under the stars and ride the broad backs of slow-moving bulls, as long as I obeyed my father. Now his father introduced all the laws of that ruling government as their family laws. He told him that you're supposed to do this because in our family we do it that way. They never told him or they never shown him the actual picture. They just told him that follow the rules of our family and you will be free. You are free. And abided by the customs of my tribe. Abided means follow. I was not troubled by the laws of man or God. It was only when I began to learn that my boyhood freedom was an illusion, when I discovered as a young man that my freedom had already been taken from me, that I began to hunger for it. And when he got to know later on that no, I was never free, I was always a slave, that was the time when he wanted it. See, if I'm telling you that you're very rich, you're very rich, you're very rich from the very birth when you're born, and all of a sudden I tell you that you're poor, you're going to strive for money. You would be like, I want money now. I want to get rich. That hunger will develop in you because you always thought that you were rich. But if you were born poor, I've been telling you that we are poor, we have to live like that, and you somehow you will accept it. Similarly, if his parents would have told him that we are slaves, he would have accepted it. But he never told him. His father never told him that we are slaves. He told him that we are free. You just have to follow the family rules and the tribe rules. So when he got to know that he is not free actually, then he strived for it. Then he wanted it. Then he craved for it. At first, as a student, I wanted freedom only for myself. When he was a student, he was studying in a law college. At that time, he wanted freedom for himself. The freedom was he wanted to stay out night. Then he wanted to read whatever book he wanted to read. He wanted to go wherever he chose. So these were certain transitory freedoms. Later on, as a young man, I yearned for basic and honorable freedoms of achieving my potential, of earning my keep, of marrying and having a family, the freedom not to be obstructed in a lawful life. And then he wanted freedom for his family. Whatever initially he had freedom, he wanted uh, individual freedom. But later on, he wanted freedom for his own family. He wanted to be respected. He wanted to be treated equally. So that's how his definition of freedom changed. Explanation part 14. But then I slowly saw that not only was I not free, but my brothers and sisters were not free. I saw that it was not just my freedom that was curtailed, but the freedom of everyone who looked like I did. That is when I joined the African National Congress. And that is when the hunger of my freedom became the hunger for the freedom of my people. Later on, he realized that no, it was not only his family or individually him, but everyone who looked like him were slaves. And that was the point when he realized that he has to fight for it. And he joined African National Congress. He wanted his people, he wanted the community, the black community to live with dignity, with respect. That animated my life because he always thought that he's free, he has self-respect. That transformed a frightened young man into a bold one. That drove a law-abiding attorney to become a criminal, that turned a family-loving husband into a man. Attorney means lawyer. Earlier he was a lawyer who abided law, but later on he became a criminal as per the law. Criminal means a person who does not follow law. At that time, a very brutal government was ruling. So, whichever person or whosoever did not follow the rule, did not follow that brutality, he or she was considered as criminal. A family-loving husband turned into a man without a home. That forced a life-loving man to live like a monk. Monk means the one who has abandoned everything. Saint. I am no more virtuous or self-sacrificing than the next man, but I found that I could not even enjoy the poor and limited freedoms I was allowed when I knew my people were not free. Freedom is indivisible. The chains on any one of my people were the chains on all of them. The chains on all of my people were the chains on me. He said you cannot be specific about freedom. If my people are not free, that means I am also not free. I have to fight for them. Explanation part 15. I knew that the oppressor must be liberated just as surely as the oppressed. A man who takes away another man's freedom is a prisoner of hatred. He said that not only the person who's being oppressed, the person who's a slave is suffering, but the person who's an oppressor is also a slave of his own hatred. See, if they would have lived together happily, it did not matter to them. Oh, a black person has come. Okay, how does it matter? He's a human being. Oh, a white person has come. How does it matter? Again, he's a human being. They all would have been free mentally. But because the white people had this notion that we are superiors, blacks are not allowed to come, so they were the prisoners of hatred. He is locked behind the bars of prejudice and narrow-mindedness. The oppressor who's oppressing someone, he is narrow-minded. Just because someone is of dark complexion, you're treating him so badly, so cruelly, that means there is some problem in you. I'm not truly free if I'm taking away someone else's freedom. Just as surely as I'm not free when my freedom is taken from me. The oppressed and the oppressor alike are robbed of their own humanity. So this is it. This is the end of the chapter. I hope this part is clear. Stay home, stay safe.